The day missiles were launched at the Blackbird for the first time, July 26, 1968, an SR-71 Blackbird is ripping across the sky over northern Vietnam at 83,000 feet in Mach 3. The reconnaissance systems officer suddenly sees an R light flash on his panel. A North Vietnamese SAM site has just started searching for them on radar. He doesn't panic. This was routine. Then, the M light comes on. They're now being tracked. That was unusual. What happened next turned into the longest 60 seconds of the crew's lives. Flying straight over Hanoi, the L light suddenly lights up on the countermeasures panel. Missiles in the air. The pilot instantly asks their ARSO, "Has it been a minute?" Because the SA-2 surface-to-air missile takes exactly 58 seconds to reach their altitude. When they finally touched down, the film from the cameras proved it. 2 missiles had been fired. This was the very first time in history anyone had ever launched at an SR-71 Blackbird. Over the next decades, more than 4,000 missiles would be sent after Blackbirds, and not a single one ever scored a hit. But today on Aviation Reviews, we're going way beyond the headlines. Why did this jet need 2 classic car engines just to fire up? How did it capture razor-sharp spy photos while moving 3 times the speed of sound? What hidden design feature actually stopped it from going faster? And why was liquid nitrogen, not jet fuel, the real thing that cut its combat range short? Stick with me, because this is not what most people think. Why a third of the fleet was lost in accidents? Here's the part that still shocks people. Not one single SR-71 was ever shot down by an enemy. 0 combat losses. Yet roughly 1/3 of the entire fleet was destroyed anyway, lost in accidents. A lot of pilots started calling it a non-stop series of emergencies at Mach 3, but that's not the full picture. This aircraft was actually incredibly reliable. Every system was engineered to work together flawlessly almost every single time. The issue was simple. When something did fail at 80,000 feet and triple the speed of sound, it created stories you'll never forget. Crews knew their jets inside out. They could sense every tiny vibration, rumble or wiggle, and instantly understand what it meant. But when a serious problem hit, that big master caution light would pop on, and the pilot had to glance down at the panel between his legs, a board with around 40 different warning lights that pinpointed exactly what had gone wrong. Let me walk you through one of the most intense saves in Blackbird history, the terrifying dual hydraulic failure story. April 9th, 1982. Colonel Lee Shelton and Major Bill Keller lift off from Beale Air Force Base in an SR-71 that had been pulled out of years of deep storage. Everything feels perfect until Mach 3 at 71,000 feet when the master caution light suddenly snaps on. They check the panel. System A, flight hydraulic failure. The Blackbird had 2 fully independent hydraulic systems, A and B. Procedure was clear. Dump fuel and land as fast as possible. But as they start descending, the caution light comes on again. System B has now failed too. Both crew members said the exact same thing at the same moment. Oh shit, the manual is crystal clear. Dual hydraulic failure means eject immediately. They still had a little control left, so they made the ballsy decision to try nursing the jet all the way back to Beale instead of punching out. 30 miles from the runway they call the tower. "We have total flight control hydraulic failure." The tower's reply? Oh shit. When they crossed the threshold, System B pressure was basically 0. The jet was barely listening to the controls. Somehow they planted it safely on the runway. Investigation later showed the seals in both systems had failed. Out of 6 gallons of hydraulic fluid, only a few cups remained. But not every crew got that kind of luck. On April 21st, 1989, a similar double hydraulic failure made the aircraft uncontrollable. The pilot and Rousseau ejected safely and were rescued. But why was an SR-71 operating way out near the Philippines in the first place? The most dangerous missions in the SR-71. The Blackbird had 2 main forward operating locations, Det 1 at Kadena in Okinawa, Japan, and Det 4 at Mildenhall in England. Usually 3 jets were kept at each base. Missions from the 2 detachments were night and day different because of geography. From Japan, they flew over North Korea, Vietnam, and the eastern edges of the Soviet Union. From England, they patrolled the Barents Sea, keeping tabs on the Soviet nuclear submarine fleet near Murmansk. Every pilot who flew both said the same thing. The Barents Sea missions were the scariest by far. If anything went wrong, an engine issue for example, they'd have to slow down below Mach 3 and become easy targets for Soviet MiGs. That's exactly why the Air Force made every new crew start with the Asian routes first. You had to prove yourself in the Pacific before they cleared you for the real pressure cooker over Soviet waters. Becoming a Blackbird pilot was harder than you think. Getting picked to fly the SR-71 was brutally competitive. Only 2 or 3 pilots were selected each year out of hundreds who wanted in. The physical and mental bar was basically astronaut level. Before they ever flew a real combat mission, every pilot first had to rack up about 100 hours in the SR-71B, the special trainer version with the raised instructor cockpit that was literally the fastest classroom on the planet. In 30 years of service, just 150 aviators ever qualified. Every single one trained on only one of the 2 trainer airframes ever built. Out of the 29 SR-71A models produced, The Air Force only kept around 10 flying at any given time. The rest were rotated through deep storage or major overhauls, so every airframe aged at exactly the same rate. When the fleet finally retired, the hours were amazingly consistent across the board. One of the most mind-blowing things you could experience in the cockpit was crossing the Terminator, that sharp line between day and night, experiencing 3 sunsets in 1 hour. At 80,000 feet, the Terminator is razor sharp. Pilots described heading into the dark side as flying straight into a solid black wall. During one winter flight over the Arctic Ocean, the Blackbird's incredible speed let it cross that line 6 times in a single hour. 3 full sunsets and 3 sunrises in just 60 minutes. Some days, the crew literally ate breakfast twice. The awful Commute and the Mach 3 alternative. Pilot tours lasted about 6 weeks and happened 4 to 6 times a year. Getting to the forward bases usually meant 12 to 24 hours crammed in the back of a KC-15Q tanker. Many called it the most miserable commute in aviation. The dream ticket was a glowing heat mission, ferrying the Blackbird itself at Mach 3 after maintenance. Eat breakfast in California, light the burners, and 7 hours later have breakfast again in Japan. Every pilot fought for those flights. The SR-71 was an absolute diva when it came to maintenance. The 20-hour ritual to launch a Blackbird. Every single flight required 18 to 20 hours of preparation. Mission data was loaded. A 16-person team inspected every inch, and fueling alone took 4 specialists a full hour. The crew arrived 40 minutes before takeoff. One of the most important checks was the inlet spikes. They had to move within 1/10 of an inch of each other. These spikes traveled up to 26 inches to perfectly trap the supersonic shock waves. At extreme altitude, the air is so thin that the faster you go, the more air the engines need, so the spikes pull back to let more in. If a shock wave ever got sucked inside the inlet, it would slam the compressor blades and destroy the engine instantly. Speaking of those engines, Wyatt needed 2 Buick cars to start up. The J58 engines had no built-in starter. They used special ground carts nicknamed Buicks, each one packed with 2 big, unmodified V8 car engines running wide open with 0 mufflers. The roar was insane. Each Blackbird engine required its own Buick to spin it up. But the real surprise about range is even crazier, the hidden factor that limited SR-71 range. At Mach 3, the fuel tanks heated to over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. To stop explosive fuel vapors, they had to fill the empty space with inert nitrogen gas made from liquid nitrogen. The jet only carried 2 27.5-gallon liquid nitrogen tanks. Later, they added a 13-gallon one. Every air refueling vented some of it out, so the true limiting factor on long missions was liquid nitrogen, not the amount of jet fuel. Busting the famous fuel leak myth. Yes, the Blackbird leaked fuel on the ground, and yes, it always air refueled right after takeoff. But the story that it leaked so badly they had to top off immediately is completely wrong. They took off with only about half a tank because a full 80,000-pound fuel load was so heavy it could damage the landing gear during taxi and takeoff. They discovered that the hard way. The second reason was simple. The Air Force had 35 special KC-135Q tankers whose crews all needed constant practice hooking up with the Blackbird. The camera tech that made Mach 3 photography possible. This was the ultimate spy plane. Its cameras could photograph a 6-inch object from 85,000 feet, but at 3,000 feet per second, even a fast shutter would move the jet hundreds of feet during exposure. Total blur. The brilliant fix was a gimbaled mirror inside the camera that moved at precisely the right speed to cancel out the forward motion and deliver crystal clear images, pushing the Blackbird to its absolute speed limit. Officially, it was Mach 3 Plus. Designed for 3.2, normal cruise was 3.17. The real ceiling was set by compressor inlet temperature, 427 degrees Celsius normal, 450 in emergencies. They were never allowed above Mach 3.3. For the famous coast-to-coast record flight, the crew asked to try Mach 3.5 so they could cross America in under an hour, but Lockheed said no. Too risky if an engine unstarted. They flew it at Mach 3.3 and set the record in 67 minutes and 54 seconds. One pilot did hit Mach 3.49 in super cold air near Murmansk. The absolute theoretical max was Mach 3.55. Beyond that, the spikes would be fully retracted and lose their ability to control the shock waves. The SR-71 Blackbird was, and still is, one of the most incredible engineering achievements in aviation history. A jet that pushed the limits of physics and human courage for decades. If you enjoyed this deep dive on aviation reviews, do me a huge favor and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new review. Tell me in the comments, what surprised you the most? The missile drama, the hydraulic nightmare, or the insane engineering details? Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one where we review another absolute legend of the skies. Fly safe.